Welcome back to the drive to Dayton. It has been a while since you guys have seen us. We've got a chance to talk to you about everything, but uh, we just had the tournament draw on Sunday, and there would not be a drive to Dayton podcast without the tournament. So Ralph, now that we've been able to, see everything on paper, see all the districts, see all the regions, and all the chaos that ensued, what are your initial thoughts just on the seven division format now that we actually get to see what it's going to look like on paper?
It is overwhelming. And I spend a lot more time looking at high school football playoff brackets than you do, I'm sure, during my experience covering high school football across Ohio. And for some reason, that just seemed a lot easier than what I'm faced with here. I'm sure a majority of the reason for that is not every team makes the playoffs in football. Every team makes the playoffs in basketball. And it just seems like a lot looking at the seven divisions. There's just more places to look through, more divisions to break down, more districts to look at. I mean, it's just a lot going on that OHSAA brackets page. There's so many different places that you can go, and it's going to be interesting. But I mean, before we like get into the nitty gritty, I think it's gonna be a grind for people covering this, figuring out what games you want to go to. I mean, I was trying to get a jump start on potential future matchups, and I didn't last too long before I sort of gave up on that endeavor this afternoon. So it's going to be a lot coming all at once, which is exciting, but also really, really
Yo.
interesting. Hey.
Oh man, you brought up a great point before we started recording today. I'm on the OHSA website right now. I'm looking at, let's say, Division One, Region One, which is all the Northeast Ohio teams will be playing at Kent. I click on Northeast Four, right? Which in the past you're looking at, we usually get about what, 12, 16 teams in a bracket, it felt like.
Usually 10 to 13, I think, was average.
Yeah, and now I'm click on a bracket and I see four teams. It almost just kind of seems like a waste, in a way where, like, let's just put all 16 of these Northeast Ohio teams on one page. That way it's just easier for everybody to look at, everybody to digest. I actually go through and I type up like a daily schedule for the tournament. I just finished going through Division One. Hopefully, going to knock out D2 and D3 today. I'll probably post that for everybody to look at. That way, it's just kind of like a day-to-day schedule for each division. That way, hopefully, it provides some relief for everybody who's trying to, maneuver and figure out where we're going. But man, just looking at this, I have mixed feelings. In Division One, it is kind of nice to see Division One, just kind of condensed in a way, right? Like, it's not a ton of teams, and I think it's going to go pretty quickly. I was looking, when I type up these daily schedules, especially in Division One or D2, any of them, in the previous years, there would just be so many days where there was some sort of tournament game going on. And in Division One, unless things have changed in the last, 48 hours, there's only one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. There's about 15 or 16 days with Division One tournament games, where I feel like in the past that was much bigger, where you'd be looking at upwards of 20 plus days of games. So just, yeah, just feels like it's going to go quicker. I'm sure it's not. But yeah, it's just interesting to look at everything.
You think that with less teams, do you think teams being a little fresher is going to have any much of an impact in divisions one and two? Because you're basically eliminating two games that you have to win to make a playoff run in division one or two than in the old format. Like, are we thinking that's going to play a part for any teams that sort of hit their stride or are lighter on depth or play like a crazy up-tempo style? Like, do we think that's going to affect anything?
I think it's going to help, especially the later into the tournament that we go. In the previous years, teams that in Division One, when they would play a state semi or a Final Four game, a lot of times they'd have to turn around and play the next day. Um, and now they get virtually an entire week off before they have to play again. I'm looking at this now. The regional finals in Division One are Saturday the 8th and Sunday the 9th. And then you get basically an entire week off. And then it looks like the final four games are going to be on Sunday, March 16th. All the sites and times to be determined. And then the state championship is on the 22nd. So I do like that teams are actually going to get some rest and time to prepare because there'd be a lot of times in the Final Four where you got coaches that are preparing for two teams at once just in case they win and have to turn around and play the very next day. So I think this kind of makes the jobs a little bit easier as far as the high school coaches and just the grunt of preparing and watching games and watching film. So hopefully, it helps and we see some dividends there in terms of just better basketball being played. Um, but yeah, I don't think any of us are going to really have a true opinion on this until, just until we see it play out and see how this first year goes.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest part of it. There's some things that you can tell from looking at the bracket. All right, this is going to be different. This is how it's going to change. But I think there's going to be a lot of things that you play it out the first year and go, all right, this was kind of cool. This was annoying. Like I had more coaches hitting me up this year trying to figure out strategy of where to go on the bracket than ever, just because for some divisions and regions, you had way more options. And then other regions of the state, you had no options. It's kind of bizarre that how ununiform the tournament is from northeast to southwest to southeast to central. Like it's a lot of different stuff going on to eventually reach a championship game in Dayton. Like a lot's happening.
Yeah, and the one thing I will say, at least looking at Division One, I haven't gotten a chance to type up the daily schedule yet for the other divisions, but I remember in the past, there would be some parts of the state that would start almost a week before everybody else. And this year, it's actually pretty close. It looks like Southwest Ohio starts on February 21st. That is the very first tournament game in Division One with Mason playing Princeton. Northeast Ohio kicks off the very next day on the 22nd with John Marshall and Lorraine. 24th, some more Southwest Ohio games. Um, yeah, so I mean, it seems like everybody, and then the 26th is when Central and the rest of the state kicks off. So really not that much of a gap, like we've been accustomed to saying over the years, where you'd get, dude, there'd be some teams where, they'd already be in the district semis or the district finals while other regions are still playing the sectional finals. So I do like, at least in Division One, everything is pretty condensed. Everyone is relatively starting around the same time. So yeah, it's so interesting seeing no Northwest Ohio region in Division One. That's still, pretty hard to wrap my head around at the moment with, was it Toledo, Whitmer, and Perrysburg being the only two Division One teams in Northwest Ohio?
Yeah.
That just kind of blows my mind. The area of the state that big and there's only two Division One teams, where Southwest Ohio has, enough schools to have their own region.
Yeah,
Same,
Southwest and Central get six.
yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. It does kind of put into perspective where like the biggest public schools are and like the biggest condensement of population. Like you can tell, I mean, Lima Senior, they're not Division One. Look at every school in Toledo besides Perrysburg and Whitmer. They're all Division Two or Division Three. So it definitely puts into perspective where sort of population density is at and where each of these schools are size wise. But it's startling because a lot of the schools that when I looked at my Division 3 teams that I think have a shot to win the state title, a lot of those bigger D2 schools actually got it worse by being in Division 3 this year than they got it in Division 2 last year. Like I think they had a better shot to win last year than they will this year, adding a Garfield Heights, a Cincinnati Aiken, a Louisville, a Hoban, a Akron St. Vincent St. Mary. All these schools were Division 1, and they're all dropping down to Division 3. And you look at teams like Toledo Central Catholic, Bishop Hartley, they were Division 2, and now they're stuck in Division 3 with all those other heavy hitters. It's quite interesting.
Uh, that Northeast Ohio Division 3, man, just big time. I thought there were legitimately 6 teams had they stayed in the region that would have had somewhat of a chance to win it. But this year they had the option to go to 3 different regions. If you were a Northeast Ohio team, you could stay home, right, and play a regional tournament at Medina. You could go out west, which is typical, right? Play at Toledo, or now you can go to Columbus. So there's a possibility that in Division 3 we get 3 Northeast Ohio teams in the Final Four, which is just kind of mind blowing to me. And I feel like I spoke to almost every school that was like in the top 6 to 7 of Division 3 in Northeast Ohio. Guys just trying to get a grasp of how good or how deep Central Ohio was, if that route was easier or more favorable than going west or staying home. And it was honestly difficult to give some of these guys answers just because you didn't know where everybody else was going.
No,
Had Garfield Heights went to Columbus, things shift. Maybe somebody else stays home that had intentions on going west, and vice versa. We're going to bring in a guest though who has a lot of thoughts, a lot of experience. Working with the OHSAA tournament has done a really good job over the last couple of years. So we're going to bring in Martin RPI. Joining us here on the drive to Dayton, we have the one, the only, the Martin RPI. So first off, man, I have never really got a chance to talk to you face to face. I know this kind of doesn't really count, but it's close enough.
Yeah.
Definitely want to just give you a major shout out in terms of what you do as far as just collecting the schedules, the records, everything that goes into, putting together the RPI formula, the website. As someone who also runs a website, I just know how tedious and just how many behind the scenes hours that takes. So just want to first off just commend you on that. And thanks, man. It's always interesting looking at the RPI and the rankings and comparing it to the eye test. I've always been more of an eye test guy myself. I'm kind of more of a blend of eye test and analytics. But it's definitely curious just to see what the computer comes up with versus,
Yep.
just kind of some of my own personal thoughts. So,
Yeah.
before we get started, looking at the tournament and everything, man, like what was I guess your kind of driving factor or, what made you start, doing Martin RPI?
Well, first of all, thanks a lot or thank you for the kind words. I appreciate that. Big fans of both of you guys as well. But kind of getting started with this, I think I was doing it on my own back around like 2018 or so. A few years after I graduated, I've always been super interested in postseason tournament for basketball and football. I've gone to state for a long time for both of those. Um, The main reason I started doing it, I started with just like the small schools in Northwest Ohio because it always just drove me nuts how, some districts have been a lot stronger than others and there's weaker ones and every single year was the same thing. So I kind of started it as a way to compare the toughness of the districts in Northwest Ohio. Um, and then in doing that, so to figure out one team's RPI ranking, you need like a ton of different schools' schedules updated. So at that point, when I was just doing those schools, it was like 500 or so out of the 800 schools that I was doing. So I just figured if I just added the other 300, I might as well just do the whole state. So um, it wasn't a huge increase of workload because of 550 something like that, it was a lot. So going up to 800 wasn't much of a big deal. So, but yeah, when I started doing it for the smaller schools in Northwest Ohio, I had just sent out a couple screenshots of like my spreadsheet that I was using to like from my personal account on Twitter, and it caught on like wildfire with people around here. So that's kind of when I started to do it for the whole state.
I always find it interesting how, some conferences, it's very easy to find scores from those games, right? They have very active, Twitter X accounts where as soon as the games are over, the coaches are posting the scores, like just more accessible.
Yep.
Whereas like sometimes, man, like I try to find scores in some of these leagues and it is like virtually impossible. It's like you
Yeah.
have to call like the local pizza shop, or you gotta
Right.
reach out to just anybody, like find somebody who was at the game, or like it's insane. So like, what are some
Yeah.
of the challenges I guess that you run into, as far as chasing down scores? I'm sure Max Prep
Yeah.
helps a little bit, but
Yep. Yeah, it's definitely, I feel like it's gotten better and better each year that I've been doing this, especially like you said, now that it's kind of required through Max Preps, it's been a lot easier. But there's still, I think this year there's like you were saying, there's like 5 or 6 conferences across the state that almost never have anything updated until like maybe even 2 or 3 days after the game goes on. But yeah, what I use the Max Preps pages. There's Davy One for all the schools up in Northwest Ohio. Those guys are great.
shout out to those
Everything,
guys, man.
dude.
I feel like they don't get a lot of flowers. They don't do
No.
this for the likes or the retweets.
Yeah.
Just two junkies, man. They
Yeah,
love basketball.
exactly. They have
It's
everything
awesome.
updated like in the snap of a finger too. Every single game.
I
They,
haven't
they
seen him at all this year. I saw him at the OG Winter Classic like
Yeah.
2, 3 years in a row, and I usually see them at Bowling Green for a couple playoff games. So
Yeah.
hopefully in the next couple weeks, I'll get to see the Davy One guys out somewhere.
yeah,
Oh yeah.
they remind me of like the two older guys, like from the Muppets. The guys that like sit up in the balcony,
Yeah.
narrate the shows and everything. But
Yeah.
yeah, shout out to those guys for sure.
Yeah. Davey one. Those guys have been a lifesaver. I use 270 Hoops. I use their scoreboard a lot as well for the Columbus area. All of the Southwest Ohio teams, whatever website that is, that they all have like the same website for their conference scores. Those are super clutch. I wish every conference in the state had that exact same thing. I
It would
Dude,
love
be
it.
incredible.
oh my
I
God,
love
we've
them.
been we've been preaching that for a long time. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure those sites are probably required through the SWDAB. I would
Yep.
imagine.
Yeah, that
Like,
would make sense. Yeah.
yeah,
So
I
this,
don't. I don't think it's a coincidence that virtually every single league
Right.
except for one down there has it.
Yeah.
Um, man, I wish that was almost a.
I love those. They're great. Lifesaver.
They're phenomenal. And then,
Yeah.
not only do you get the schedules, and the league schedules, then you get the stats, you get the rosters, and
Yeah.
you go
Yep.
look at 5 years ago and see who Moeller's leading scorer was.
Yep.
Just
They
like
got all the history in there too. Yeah.
it's the click of a button, man. So I think that'd
Yeah.
be awesome if we could, find a way for everybody to utilize that
Yeah.
format and
Yeah.
that setup.
It,
But
for all the Southwest schools that have those, all the schools are on 270, all the ones that are on are Davy one. Those, like say on a Friday when there's 700 teams that have a game, I can get through all of those schools and like maybe an hour and a half breezing through those. But that like those ones that you really got to dig for can take, if there's 50 schools that you got to dig for, that will take the same amount of time. I'll get to the point where I'm like searching on Facebook and find a guy who's like live streaming in the top row. And I'm just trying to find a glimpse of the scoreboard at the end of the game. So the little things like that too. It can be pretty tough, but I'm looking forward to tournament time is my favorite part of the year, obviously, because the brackets and everything, but that's when I don't have to update everything daily. And I think I was laying in bed the other night and I was looking at my health app, and it's like since November when I started getting the schedules around, it's like I've been averaging 4 hours and 8 minutes of sleep a night. So I'm looking forward to tournament time for sure.
yeah, man, we gotta get you down on Media Row for the state tournament, man. I'm sure I don't know if you go with family,
Yep.
friends, if you do a thing, man, but yeah, it'd be awesome. Maybe we could sneak you down there. Don't tell Tim Street.
Hey,
But yeah.
let me go on the sideline for football. So
Oh, that's all. Yeah, hopefully, yeah.
yeah.
Hopefully
there
we
it
can.
is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
hopefully.
I think this year there's a group of I think 19 of us that are going down this year. Is like 12 that's like my family, and then there's a couple more that we added the last couple of years that are just I started taking my kids. I have two 10-year-olds, so some of their friends come and their dads. So they've started coming up the last few years. But yeah, we almost have it. Buying tickets is a chore trying to get everybody together and everything. So, but yeah, I'll have to come hang out with you guys for a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So one thing I wanted to talk about just kind of crossed my mind. So I know like the OHSAA used the Martin RPI for like the Northwest Ohio seedings. Was that 2 years ago or was that last year?
This is the second year for Max. Perhaps would have been 3 years
Yeah,
ago, 2 years ago, something like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
time flies,
Yeah,
man.
2023 tournament, I think.
Yep. Yep.
So
That's right.
So just for the viewers who might not be aware of, just the difference between what the Martin RPI looks like versus the Max Preps formula, what are some of the major differences?
So this year it's pretty similar. If you kind of on my website, I have the first two columns is like what I have them ranked on, and the one right next to it is what their official ranking is through the OHSA and Max Preps. This year they're pretty similar. They kind of tweaked the formula a little bit. Last year they were still kind of way off because they didn't factor in school size at all last year, and that's something that I've always done. So since they are considering school size this year and have like that weighted system in that way, it's helped that one a lot as far as, or at least comparing to mine. Um, but this year, believe theirs is what 40-40-20 is like the weight for winning percentage, OWP. Mine is like 35-25 and then like 5% for school size. So it's kind of figured out or calculated differently, but it's essentially the same thing. They have, I think I take in like 5% more or take into account 5% more strength of schedule than Max Preps does, but it doesn't make a huge difference overall. But yeah, I think I said this a couple of years ago when they announced that they were going to be using Max Preps. I said then, I was like, I think it's a good thing for sure. Obviously, I've had a few kinks over the first couple of years that have been worked out and hopefully continues to. But yeah, I think, and like you said, with the eye test thing, I'm the same way you are. I look at these and I'll find somebody. I think like Harvest Prep right now, they're ranked 21st. I'm like, that should be a top five team. But also D5 is so loaded, I think. So, but yeah,
That just looking at how the numbers have changed from last year to this year, like you mentioned, it's startling how much more similar they look just because of the
yep,
minor changes that they made to
yep,
better incorporate strength of schedule. So I definitely
yep,
think that they need to be applauded for making that
yep, for
decision
sure,
because it
for sure.
made the seating more fair this year.
Yep.
And we've had some talks on Twitter about people complaining about the RPI formula. And I always bring up when coaches voted for stuff, it was as rigged, if not more rigged,
Right.
than what
Yeah.
an RPI formula is. Like,
Yeah.
if you were like, could you imagine Perrysburg and Whitmer being voted on by the
Over.
14 Northeast Ohio schools?
That would be
They would be
brutal.
like,
Yep.
I don't know anything about these teams. So it's
Yeah.
just, I was very pro having an
Yeah.
RPI formula to rank the teams just because, yeah, some of the coaches voting, we saw it in football the one year that they did
Right.
it. And whoa, boy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh yeah. I forgot about that. The year the COVID year was that when that was?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
That was interesting.
The buddy system in the voting was always pretty funny to look at. Me being a Stark County guy, the Federal League is always like my home league.
Mhm.
McKinley, Jackson, Perry, all those dudes, and a lot. Those coaches are interesting, man. Some of those guys really like each other, some of them don't.
Yeah.
It was always funny just to see how they would vote. Versus like they'd vote for their feelings more times than they would vote. Just like
Yep.
based on
Right.
what was actually on the floor. Uh,
Exactly.
you brought up something earlier that I think is an interesting topic, and I want to kind of hear your thoughts on. Um, I think the OHSA, like one of the main reasons why they shifted to this seven division format, was I think they were under the impression that this was a enrollment issue. right, in a lot of ways. And, we need to split up some of these teams, to have more boys versus less boys. And I think we see that that was never really the case. As like, for example, Division III is so much better than Division II, right? If this was an
Yep.
enrollment issue, that wouldn't really be the case. Um,
Yep.
I always tell people it's a players issue, right? Like a Division V school that's located in the suburbs of Cleveland,
Yep.
right? The amount of talent that that school has access to pull from
Right
is
on. Yep.
substantially, bigger than a Division V school in Ottawa or Mansfield or, wherever.
Right. Right.
So it's like it's just interesting to see, like, I think how out of touch they can be in some ways, at least on the basketball side of things. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, yeah, that's spot on. I think it had been like I think I heard you mention this before at some point, and at that point I never really thought of it that way. And I was like, holy crap, that makes a lot of sense. It's kind of like a quality over quantity type thing. And I mean, going like looking at the divisions this year, like you said, you look at D3 to D2. I mean, that's kind of all the proof you need. Granted, it's only been 1 year, so who knows, but it's kind of all the proof you need that um more kids doesn't always make equal better teams at all. So um yeah, I'm kind of like on the fence about the seven divisions. I know it seems like it's super polarizing. Most people either absolutely love it or absolutely despise it. And I feel like most despise it. I'm kind of like, whatever, it's fine. I don't really care one way or another. I hate that it messed up the state tournament having 12 games, but at the same time, I'm also like seven state championship games. I'm going to have a lot of fun watching all of those. Like some of the D3 and D4 schools, like yeah, you can say it's watered down. Like some of those teams, like especially in D4, that may not in the Division IV layout probably wouldn't be down at state. Those games are still going to be super fun to watch, I think. So, yeah, I hate to mess up state tournament, but I still going into it thinking it's going to be a heck of a time. So,
I think it'll be interesting looking at, especially that we mentioned this at the start of the podcast episode, the gap between your regional championship game, your Final Four game, and then your games at UD Arena, where in the past you would play a regional championship game on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, and then you would play at UD Arena on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. And then you would play your championship game either the next night or two nights afterwards, where now you're going to play your regional title game on a weekend. Then you're going to play your Final Four game sometime the next weekend, and then
yep,
the championship game the weekend after that. So it's going to be interesting to see.
yeah,
I wonder if it feels a little drawn out, like if the anticipation between with
yeah.
that much time, because I
Kind
It's
don't
of
kind
know.
of like the college football playoff going until January
It
20th. It's
happened.
like,
And it's like you got to think if you're a team that's just like on a heater, right? And we see this all the time, especially in basketball, teams that just start clicking late. For an example, in 2023, I didn't think Archbishop Hogan was the best team in the state, right, in Division I, but those guys were playing better than anybody else at the exact right time. And they just found their groove from like the regional semis on. That team was just
you
absolutely rolling. What does that run look like for them if instead of playing 3 or 4 days later or the next day or 2 days
right.
later, now these guys have a week in between games? I think it might give teams too much time. I think you might see some teams cool off. I think you might see some teams, just kind of hit a wall in some of these games. It's going to be very, very interesting to see
Yeah.
how it plays out.
And
Uh,
I also think like going from so look the last few years, if for the D1 you could play your state semis on Friday night, you're turn around 24 hours, you're playing in the state final. Now you have a full week. I feel like, and this isn't just for D1, this is everybody, a full week between state semis and state final. I feel like the teams that have like a really, really good coach, that's gonna give them quite a good advantage, giving them a whole week of prep for that. I mean, and at that point, everybody's got a good coach. You make it to state semis, your coach is probably pretty decent. So it may not factor in at all, but I feel like the teams that have, those really good coaches that, are really good in the preparation, the scouting report, stuff like that, having a full week to do that is going to be a big advantage for some schools. But at the same time, like you said, a lot of that playing in March is I mean, throughout the whole season, you play a couple games, within a 2, 3 day window. That's what they're used to. When you only playing one game a week, like you said, you hit a wall. If you have kids that are shooting it well, they can go cold during that whole week of practice. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see for sure.
One thing, me and Ralph were talking about this earlier. Not only do like as of right now, we don't have the Final Four matchups, right? We don't know which regions are going to play each other in the Final Four, because I guess similar to football, they wait to see who makes it, and
Yeah, I hate
put
that.
some. Yeah, and we were talking about how just like how much of a factor that plays into like the draw, right? In some of these divisions, you have a choice. You have three of the four regions you can jump into. Like in
Yep.
Division Three, if you're Garfield Heights, you could have stayed in what Region 9. You could have went to Region 10 or Region 11.
Yep.
I think your choice becomes a lot more, simplified if you know which one of those regions are going to match up, or who you're likely going to play afterwards. It's just um, it's interesting, man. And I think just speaking of those Final Four games, how difficult is it for guys like us to who are going to have to pick?
Oh gosh, I know it.
You got all these Final Four games taking place during one weekend,
Yeah,
and I don't know about you guys, but I feel like I've always enjoyed the state semi games almost more than
yeah,
the state championship games in a lot of
for
ways.
sure.
Some of my favorite games at the tournament have been in the semis.
Yep, for sure.
So now you're kind of
You're going to
screwing me.
miss so many of them. Yeah. I
Yeah,
just wonder if eventually maybe in the future you play some of the state semifinal games on like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then run the championships Friday, Saturday instead of
Yeah.
having a week, and a week to
Well, I
play.
mean, you
Because you're
look
going
at
to
the
play three
beginning,
games in 15 days, essentially.
right? And like at the beginning of the season, we already have that huge overlap with football, and
Yep.
football's a week too long, anyways, with the 16 teams. But just push the basketball season back a week, and then this last week, 2 weeks, condense the state semis and state finals back into one week, and then you're good. But yeah, when I saw they or put out that they weren't announcing state semis until they knew who the regional final teams were, I was like, I better get Delphos St. John's and Rushi down at UD Arena or I'm going to be pissed.
That was the number
But
one game where I was
yeah,
like, oh, I hope
and
that somehow it doesn't work out where they
right,
play each other in a
yeah,
semifinal game.
yeah.
But
If
yeah,
if if it happens where they play semis, I better get Quinn Kwasniak in Dayton instead. So those are my demands. I don't ask for much, but
I'll
those
be
are
I'll be curious, man, just to see like which venues they opt to go with for a lot of these Final Four games.
yeah.
I don't know about you. I can't imagine playing a Final Four game in a high school,
I know it. I know it. Well, like,
or like a small college. Like
yeah,
I'm just not. I don't know. I have a lot of questions.
it'll be
Um,
impossible to get a ticket if so.
Absolutely. I'm going to feel bad for a lot of fans.
Yeah.
Just because I don't think in Ohio we have enough options to really. Let me see. I'm going to look and see when these.
well, so you got seven divisions
Yeah,
with
I'm about
two
to pull it
Final
up
Four
right
games
now.
each. So you need 14 different
14 state
games.
semi games.
And I'm not sure how many are on the same day. It would be nice if maybe we got like a Division 1, Division 2, and Division 3 all in Northeast Ohio at like one location, play one at like
Yeah.
1 p.m., one at 4 p.m., one at 7 p.m. Like that would be
Yep.
ideal. I'm sure it's not going to happen because that would make my life way too convenient. But if it does, awesome. And that's another thing that I'm trying to make my schedule, and I don't know where I'm going to end up going that Final Four weekend. But
Oh, here we go, guys. I'm looking at it now. So the Division Three Final Four will be on the 15th, same as Division
Oh
Four.
yeah, there's some on Sunday too. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, so it looks like D3 and D4 play on Saturday the 15th. Division Two will play on Sunday the 16th. Division 5 is also on the 15th. Division 6 is the 14th. So it looks like we have about that whole weekend, the
Yeah.
14th through the 16th. We're going to be
Right.
looking at just a crap ton of Final Four games.
Yeah.
Um, what are the chances that we get some really good double headers out of this for these
that's what I
Final?
said.
Yeah.
But
That's
like,
all I want. I want to see
can
more
you
than
do
one
that
game.
Can you do that on a Friday, guys?
Probably not on a Friday, but maybe on a
We
They
got a
do it
Saturday.
lot.
every other at regionals and districts and everything. They do.
Yeah,
Well,
on Tuesdays and Fridays. Yeah,
well,
they
no, because
do.
Fridays
Double
are
headers.
usually just a district final. It's usually just one game though. So,
Yeah,
But
we
look
got
at I think Division
seven on a
One
Friday.
on the 24th, you have double headers, or the 21st, you have double headers in Division One on Fridays. And I think on Tuesdays, maybe two. So I think they have occasionally gone to some of the double headers. But again, this brings it back to a point I made earlier. Every single region runs the tournament differently. Like Southwest Ohio does their thing. They've always had the neutral site double
oh
headers,
yeah,
even for like the first round.
yep,
Northwest Ohio has the locked districts. You can't pick your district, you're locked in there. Southeast Ohio doesn't let you pick
yep.
who you play against. One is in the same district as four, two is in the same district as three.
Hmm.
It's crazy how all these different regions operate so differently
Oh,
and it all comes together, but there's like
it just
different,
makes it a disaster. It's a
yeah,
disaster. You just need to copy the football model. Beginning of the year, you assign everybody to a division, everybody to a region. Each region, everybody's seated together, and everybody's like, got like the same playing field. It's
yeah.
very simple, but back TJ, back to what you were saying though about like playing in high school gyms. I'm thinking, let's say St. John's and Russia do get matched up state semis. Let's say it was in BG, which won't happen, but that has a capacity of what, 4,000 or so. That place would be probably sold out. What high school gym between Delphus and Russia has a capacity of 4,000? Where
And
the heck are they going to play that? Somebody's going to be pissed about having a much longer drive, or it's going to be at a very small high school gym.
Or it's going to be at Lima Senior
in my
or
opinion,
Lexington.
the
Like those are
waste of
literally the two biggest high school gyms I can think of, like within the
Yeah.
radius that isn't Bowling Green. Or well, maybe UNOH. I don't know. I don't know how big their gym
Boston
is though.
University, that's a decent size, but a
Not
high
quite the
school
size
size,
of
yeah.
that game. Like it's
Yeah.
so yeah, I don't know. It'll be fascinating to figure out where those games go. Do you think it is, I don't know if hypocritical is the right word, but the fact that we wait for the final four matchups, we're going to wait and figure out where we're going to play and who we're going to play for the final four, but we lock the seeds with like four, five, 6 games left in the regular season. That
Yeah.
seems like a little backwards if for
Oh,
final four games that are absolutely gigantic, these are
right.
the best of the best. We've reached the end. We're going to say, hey, we need to wait. We need to evaluate all our options and we're going to figure out where we're going to play this
Yep.
on what day. But for the first round games and second round games, we need to have the bracket locked with 2 weeks left in the regular season to prepare for everything. That just seems
Yeah.
backwards to me.
I
I
haven't
don't
even
know.
thought about that, but that's actually hilarious. That's spot on too. Spot on.
Because there's some teams who went into Selection Sunday having played 15 games
Yep. Yep. And other
out of
ones
a
in
22 game
20.
season. Now, some are
Yeah.
only going to play 19, 20, 21 because of snow cancellations and
Right.
you can't find teams to play. That's fine. But only
Yeah.
getting like 15 on the tournament bracket is crazy. Like
Yeah.
that's a third of the season. 7 out of
I know it.
21. That's a third.
I did this last year too, but there's still so much movement in the RPI rankings the last 2 weeks of the season. I
Yep.
mean, there's teams like Marion Local. They had Spencerville on Monday. They have, I think, Minster this week. They have Russia next week, or maybe on Saturday this week. Those are three tough games that makes a huge difference in what their ranking is going to be.
Well, the
So,
biggest impact is for teams like Marion Local that know they're probably going to have a long football season.
right?
And you said pushing back the basketball season a week. I don't think we need to do that, but I do think
Football
there
needs
should
shortened.
be, yeah, football shorter. I do think we need to find a better way to allow these schools that prepare basketball season for a football state championship. You look at
Oh yeah,
Massillon. Massillon played their like second game of the season. I think Hoban was already 7-0 by the
yeah,
time Massillon played their second game.
yep, for
So,
sure.
and that's good for Massillon, win a football
Yeah,
state title. I think they have a sleeper basketball team this year too, but it's so difficult for some of these programs that are excellent in football, and they bring a lot of the same kids from football to basketball season, and their basketball coach is like, I don't want to play anybody good the first 2 weeks of basketball
Right.
season. My kids need to get in shape.
Right.
I
Exactly.
develop team chemistry, and I don't want to take a loss to somebody good because what if I only get 16 games on my schedule out of the
Yeah.
22 when the bracket gets drawn? It's just,
Yeah.
I think it
I just
especially
listened to a show
matters
that,
for
yeah.
Southeast where you're
Yeah.
locked.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I just listened to a show a couple weeks ago that had Liberty Center's basketball coach, Greg Badenhop. He was talking about that too. They made state final 2 years in a row. So the last 2 years, he's had like four guys in the gym for when like coaching starts in November up until December. And he gives them a whole week off after they go to state in football. They're like, you need a reset period. So he doesn't get all of his whole team until like December 14th. He tries to, I think he said the last 2 years he would get with Marion Local and set up a scrimmage with them because they were in the same boat. So they'd each get one scrimmage and then they're starting games that Friday after like 3 days of practice. And he's like, the first couple weeks are always so sloppy because they're still in football mode. The ball handling's much weaker. They're much more physical. Fouling is a little bit out of control. Like that's got to be so hard to do, especially as a basketball coach at like a football school like that.
And
Stubbs.
another point too, that not only are you getting these guys late, right? You're not getting nearly as much practice time, but you also don't have these guys at all in the fall.
Yeah.
You have some teams that virtually have no football guys who are playing open gyms and working out and doing all these things throughout the entire fall, and then they just go right into practice. And then you got other teams who they only have three basketball guys that aren't playing football.
Yeah.
They're doing individual workouts in the fall versus other teams who got 30, 40 kids in the gym. Yeah, it's just wild how, just the differentiation across like the state and just
Yeah.
how interesting it is. But guys, I can't help but look at this Final Four weekend, the 14th through the 16th. I am going to have some serious FOMO. Just
Oh, I know it.
Can you
like
send the link to that? Because I haven't found that on like the district's page. So I don't know where I'm supposed to look for that.
Yeah, if you click on the boys basketball 2024, 2025,
Yeah.
you see that.
Mm-hmm.
Once you're on that page, click on 2025 state tournament coverage.
Oh,
I got it
okay.
up on my
So
And,
brackets too.
and then right under general tournament information, click 2025 regional and state tournament draw. And it'll takes you to like a 9-page PDF. The first 5 or 6 pages are all about the regionals and where those are at. Um, and then it looks like on page, let's see, yeah, pages 8 and 9. So the very two last pages are like the state championship weekend, but the first 6 pages are all the regionals. Um, yeah, it's just
interesting.
wild, man. Did we
Yeah,
get
I got the dates across the brackets that I have on my website. All the dates are across the top of when each round is.
So if you notice on the initial page, they posted that the semifinals would be between March 12th and 15th. And then when you open up the documents, it's only the 14th, 15th, and 16th. So it looked like in the initial plans, they were prepping for
Wednesday.
Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and instead went with Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Hmm.
Because
Yeah, it's
yes, I did
interesting.
find that now. Interesting.
Yeah, in this document that we're looking at, with those 14 through the 16 dates was last updated February 3rd. So I'm assuming that's the most recent change. What were you about to say? I thought you were about to say something, Martin.
Who, me? No, I'm good.
Oh, okay. Yeah, just yeah, it's gonna suck, man. Trying to figure out which Final Four games you want to go to. I'll be curious to see if we get like some 12 and 2 p.m. starts and then some 6 and 8 p.m. or how these things are going to be laid out to where guys like us who are just junkies and could put 4 or 5 hours in the car on a day like that.
Right. I might have to stay home and figure out how to watch them all at once on a couple different screens.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea either.
So
Yeah,
divisions 6 and 7, I'm repeating information, I'm sorry, but 6 and 7 are on Friday. and then three, four, and five are on Saturday, and
Yeah,
one and two are
one
on
and two are
Sunday.
Sunday. Yeah.
Okay. Just had to talk it out sometimes. That's the way my brain worked there.
Yeah, it's
Professional yapper.
yeah, it's crazy, man. Very interesting to see, that is for sure. So we're about what? Let me see. We're 9 days away from the Division 1 tournament starting.
And I think correct me if I'm wrong, but I looked at the Marion local Spencerville district just because I was fascinated
Yeah.
by that
Whoa.
matchup, which brings us to other topics. But I was shocked that when you go through that district on Northwest 5, Spencerville is going to play on Friday the 21st. Then they're going to play on Wednesday the 26th. And then they're going to play on Friday, the 28th, the district championship game. That seems like a very, very quick turnaround
Yep.
considering that we've sort of trimmed down these divisions by
Yeah.
going from four to seven. That seems really fast to go back
And
to
the
back to back.
and the district is absolutely loaded. Whoever comes out of that district is going to coast to the Final Four. Their
Yeah,
district
the
is
only team
crazy.
that can compete is Tri Village, probably.
Yeah. Regional final game.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Coldwater is going to play Spencerville in a district semifinal. Oh,
Yeah.
my God.
It's brutal. Brutal.
I wonder if I end up making the trip for the district semis instead of the district title game.
Catch them both.
Yeah, because they're all gonna the semis is gonna be a doubleheader at Wapak. I'm talking out loud again, but because I figured I would just go to the district final because I wanted to see both Spencerville and Marion
Yeah.
local because I was gonna go to the game on Saturday until it got snowed
Snow.
out. It's
Yep.
so I feel like it's gonna like all the results are gonna happen really fast, and we're
Yep.
gonna be scrambling, figuring out where we're gonna go
Yeah.
and
Yeah, it just
who's
stinks. Like
playing when.
usually in the past few years, it's like I'm going to this D4 game on Tuesday. I'm going to see D3 on Wednesday. Tuesday, I'm going to see D2. Friday, Saturday, we're doing the same thing. It's very late out. You can catch them all, as many as you want to. Now there's going to be a lot more harder decisions figuring out where to go.
Seven divisions, 7 days of the week.
That's right.
D1 you get Saturday, D2 Sunday, D3 Friday,
There you
D4
go.
Thursday. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting, man. I'm looking at it now. Yeah, from I mean the 21st on, let's see, there's only one. Yeah, dude, there are not many days off once the Division 1 tournament starts.
No,
Yeah, there's only
which is good that you get to watch games all the time, but it's
yeah,
also trying to find a balance.
yeah, it's going to be crazy, guys.
The Division 1 bracket, though, I thought was the best bracket in terms of I think the four best teams are all in different regions. And that was, I feel like that those would have been awesome. The D1 games in like a D4 format. Both semifinals would probably have been awesome. The final would be awesome. Um, but yeah, now the state semi games, who knows where those are going to be at.
I
Yeah,
mentioned
we
how
were.
awesome in the four division format, how awesome the Columbus D1 district finals would have been this year
Oh,
between Reynoldsburg, Olentangy Orange, Westerville North, Newark, Delaware Hayes, Olentangy Liberty,
yeah,
Upper Arlington. Like there is just talent on talent on talent. And I left out a couple teams as well there that are having great years. I mean, you look at Groveport, Hilliard Darby, like it would have been just a day stacked with high level games. So I know we're still getting a version of that in this new format with four games there, but it
yeah,
won't be the same level of competition that we would get if you threw in Westerville North and New Albany to that sort of bracket and condensed it into four divisions instead of the six Division 1 districts that you have this year.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, well, Martin, we appreciate you coming on, man, and just kind of going over these just at first, initial thoughts with us here about the tournament. the two of us, along with Kurt Stubbs, will be coming back probably in a little over a week and doing our full blown, tournament predictions, breakdowns, toughest districts and regions. We would love to have you back on for that too, man.
Sure.
Get your insight and, feel free to make some picks and participate in our challenge, man. We do it every year where we
Oh,
can pick the most. It used to be the most district winners. I think this time we're just going to go with regions.
yeah.
But feel free to join in on the fun, man. We appreciate having you on, and good luck figuring all this shit out. So,
Yeah, I
um,
got my all 28 region picks. I got them done today in case we happen to go over them. So
Yeah.
I reserve the right to change them over the last week
yeah,
and a
now we got to bring you back, man. You
half.
already
He
put in
already
the
filled it out. He jumped the gun on us. I
I
haven't even
did. I
looked at
did.
half of the regions.
I just wanted to be
Hon
prepared.
Honestly,
list.
TJ, I swear I have no idea where the teams in Northeast Ohio Division 3 ended up going. I haven't even looked at it so far. So you could
Oh,
tell me Hoban's going to Columbus or St. V's going to Toledo. I have no clue right now.
trying to think.
So
I,
Garfield Heights State put
Sonny told me that last year.
Yeah,
He
Louis.
called me after the loss to Whitmer and was like, I'm never leaving Northeast Ohio again. I'm never going
Yeah,
out west.
Hoban State put. Let's see who else. Hoban, St. V, and Garfield Heights all state put. I believe Lutheran West went out to Toledo, and then Louisville went to Columbus.
Is
those are
that the
my
most
those are my
interesting
three
region to
region
you
picks.
guys across the state? I think Region 11 is the most fascinating region for the whole statewide for
Region
me.
11 was tough.
Wow, I'd probably argue Region 10 personally. Um, like so in Northeast 5, you're looking at, Lutheran West, right? Probably the heavy favorite to come out of there. But then, God, man, they'd have to play. Hypothetically, they would play a Toledo Central Catholic in a regional semi, and then have to turn around and play a Lima Shawnee in a regional final.
They'd get Lexington in regional semis,
And
Oh,
then
and then
and then
Shawnee and Central Catholic are
Shawnee
on
and
the other
Central
side.
Catholic in the other one. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, that is right. And I remember I was actually shocked that Toledo Central Catholic and Lima Shawnee kind of opted to do that versus one of them jumping in that Northwest 3 region. Or
Yeah.
do they not have a choice?
No, they don't have a choice. Northwest, you're
Oh,
stuck to where
Yeah.
you're assigned to.
Yeah, that's where you're going.
wow. Yeah, I did. My
Don't get
brain
me
didn't
started.
put that together. Yeah, my brain didn't even put that together. I was like, God, why would those two, opt to, potentially play each other in the semis?
Yeah.
So
But
here's a
wow,
fun
yeah,
question for you before you leave.
that's crazy.
If you were Marion Local or Spencerville, do you think you have an easier path in your loaded district and then a much easier regional round? Or do you think having an easier district and a harder regional round at BG, like what path would you rather take? Because I
Oh,
think you could
look.
make a good argument for either one
So
because their district is so good,
yeah,
but the
D
region is so much worse.
right. D6, you have the Elida district that has Crestview, Lima Central Catholic, and Bluffton in it. So that Wayne Trace is in there as well. That would be a tough one. Patrick Henry in the Defiance district. So yeah, they would have a much tougher regional, but I am under the opinion that you want to make it as far as you possibly can. From like a district board perspective, you would want your best teams to make it as far as you possibly
Correct.
can, as opposed to pigeonholing them into the toughest districts ever, and then some other ones where your one seed would be a five seed in most other districts. Just it baffles me. But
Is
yeah,
Is
they're
Region
gonna have
20 the most unbalanced region out of any in the state?
Region 20 and D5. Let's see here.
Because I think I looked and your number two team in Region 20 would be number eight in two of the other regions and number nine in the third region.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So basically, besides Summit Country Day, I think the number two seed in that region is your 24th ranked team in the state. Is that correct?
Yeah, and Waynesville 24th after Summit Country Day.
So the
Wow.
number two team in a region is 24th in the state.
Yeah.
That
And
is
that's exactly
unbelievable.
how Region 21, D6, Northeast Ohio, super weak. Super weak, D6.
Yeah.
Smithville's the best team there. And that's, yeah,
Wow. Good for Smithville. Because we
yeah.
went to the battle at the Berkey. Both me and TJ we went to Smithville. We
Yeah.
took our miles there.
Yeah, shout out to Coach Kaufman, man. So,
Yep.
but
Yeah. So that's fascinating. So region 20, region 21, the regions of
Brutal.
life, baby.
Brutal.
It's
no,
where you want to be.
Yep.
but yeah, we appreciate you again, man. Like I said, we'll definitely keep you in the loop of when we come back and do kind of more of our deep dive. Be a little bit of a longer episode, but it'll be really fun. You'll get to be a part of the reunion, man. We're bringing Stubbs back.
Heck
Uh,
yeah.
so yeah, we'll gladly have you come back on, man. So
Stubbs with a
appreciate
whole
it.
year to unleash all his takes from the entire
Oh
season is
God,
going to
yeah,
be.
dude, we're gonna have to give him just like a 5 minute, just let him go off, man, before we even start.
Put him in the
Um,
bullpen.
but yeah, thanks again, man. This was fun, just kind of getting our initial thoughts and first impressions out. And like I said, once we, get a deeper look at these districts and regions, we'll double back and give
Cool.
you guys what you've really been waiting on. So
Good deal.
appreciate it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys soon here at the Drive to Dayton.